Sometimes it is appropriate to just be who we are. And sometimes half-assed efforts are not only acceptable, they are called for. Take the incident of driving to the gym with my son. My schedule that day was quite full, but both my son and I enjoy exercise. It seemed better to get in a very short exercise than none at all. If it's worth doing, even half an hour of it is just fine and certainly worth it. Sometimes you may be too tired to go to the concert you had so been looking forward to. But have you ever thought about doing half a concert? Leave at intermission and still go to bed early? So you'll have the joy of the concert and you still get the rest you need? Or if your schedule's very busy and you had a meeting scheduled, have you considered going to half of that meeting? Show up late or leave early so you can still get everything else in but won't have missed out altogether. Or dropping by a friend who you wanted to have a long visit with, but just drop by for a hug and a hi and bye and then keep going, which is certainly better than not seeing him at all. Everything worth doing can be well worth doing half-assed. It sure beats missing out on so many things just because we can't excel up to our expectations. Our humanity is allowed, and it is more important than perfection. This topic reminds me of a story in the Christian New Testament. Jewish believers at the time of Jesus followed the Jewish law, which prohibited any work on the Sabbath, and that included harvesting. In Mark 2:23-27 we read, "One Sabbath, Jesus was walking through the grain fields, and as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, 'Why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?' He answered, 'Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need in the days of Abiathar, the high priest? He entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for priests to eat, and he also gave some to his companions.' Jesus said to them, 'The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath.'" Here they were, Jesus and his buddies, minding their own business, walking by a field. Those of you who grew up in the country or have taken vacations there might have done the same as I have. You grab a head of grain, you roll it in your hands till the grains separate, and then you pop them in your mouth. Chewy, tasty, holds off hunger for a little while. And that was allowed at the time to do when you walked by a field. But that is harvesting, isn't it? And it was the Sabbath. I actually even like the Sabbath rule. It is great to set aside a day for things other than work. I'm not real successful at that, but I'm working on it. It is good to rest and focus on issues other than our physical survival, making money, paying the bills, getting stuff done, and complying with the pressures of the lives that we live. That is actually why we have time to come together this morning, because we took time off. We set it aside just for this purpose. Even our current Sundays are originally inspired by Sabbath rules. So aren't the Pharisees right? Did the disciples not harvest? Jesus presents a very interesting take on rules in this story. He went below the surface of the law. He asked, what's the intention behind this rule? It is not for people to go hungry. He even states that King David violated the sacred rule to feed himself and his companions. The rules are made to enrich our lives, not to oppress us. No, the disciples were not harvesting that day. They were happily grabbing some grain to feed themselves. That was allowed on any other day, and it was not laboring in the fields. Jesus said, the Sabbath is made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Yes, adherence to a law or rule can be important. Laws and rules allow us to safely coexist, and they have their place. But they are not here to torture us and keep us from living life. If we replace the word Sabbath with whatever pressure or task we have in mind, it might make more sense for us today. For instance, the marathon race at the Olympics was made for people, not people for the marathon race. That would allow injured racers to drop out without shame. Once we realize that we as humans are the ones who matter in this life, and it is for our own benefit that we restrict ourselves through rules, laws, goals, and ambitions, then we can take them in stride. Yes, I would love to exercise for an hour every day. At times I do. Most days I only manage a half-hour effort, and there are even some days where I don't exercise at all. That is fine. That is not perfection, but it is just fine. Exercise was made for me. I was not made for exercise. I can allow myself to be happily the limited and perfect person I am and jump into life wholeheartedly. Sometimes my effort is a good and strong one, and sometimes it is negligible at best. But that does not need to stop me. The challenge is to distinguish between which parts of my life deserve the wholehearted effort of everything worth doing is worth doing well, and which parts of my life can at times get a half-hearted, half-assed effort. It takes a thorough examination of our values and priorities, and we may each come up with a different priority list. And that is fine as long as we do not require perfection of ourselves. And we still find courage to attempt new challenges. Then we can live well. Then we can have a joyful and rich life.